I was forced to come, the girl said coldly, on blind date. But the single dad CEO changed everything. Golden lights spilled from the chandeliers, bathing the restaurant in an elegant, honeyed glow. Jazz music hummed softly from hidden speakers, blending with the delicate clinking of cutlery and quiet murmurs from well-dressed couples. Every detail, from the polished marble floors to the crisp white tablecloths, spoke of luxury, calm, and control. Then the door opened. A man in a sharp black suit stepped inside, tall and composed, with a little girl clinging to his hand. Her dress was light pink, her curls a golden halo around her cherubic face, and her tiny fingers clutched an old teddy bear so worn it seemed part of her. The maitre d's eyebrows lifted in surprise, but quickly returned to professional neutrality as the man offered a polite nod and scanned the room. Jake Anderson bent down beside his daughter, adjusting the collar of her coat with a tender smile. "We're just meeting someone new, all right? Like a princess meeting another princess." Sophie looked up with wide, curious eyes and nodded, her voice no louder than a whisper. "Okay, Daddy." Jake straightened and led her gently toward the far corner of the room, where a woman sat alone at a table for two. She was beautiful, but not in a polished, practiced way. Her blonde hair was pulled back loosely. She wore a coat that looked second-hand, too thin for the season. She sat with her back straight and her arms crossed, staring out the window like she was somewhere else entirely. Jake approached the table, his voice warm and courteous. "Hi, I'm Jake. Thank you for—" "I was forced to come," the woman cut him off without looking at him. Her voice was flat, emotionless. "I don't even know your name." The air turned still. Jake paused mid-sentence, caught off guard. Across from her, Sophie blinked up at the stranger, tilting her head. Jake cleared his throat and nodded, calm but distant. "I'm sorry, this was clearly a mistake." "Daddy?" Sophie tugged on his sleeve, whispering with innocent hope. "Is she my new mommy?" For the first time, the woman turned her head. Her eyes met Jake's for only a second before drifting down to the child. Her expression shifted, not dramatically, just enough to register something like surprise. She hesitated, then she spoke, her gaze fixed on Sophie. "We're already here. Let the little one enjoy a good meal." Jake exhaled and nodded. It was not exactly an invitation, but it was something. He pulled out the chair and sat down with restrained formality. The first few minutes were strained. Lily sipped her water without speaking. Jake offered the menu to Sophie, asking what she wanted, but his voice lacked the usual warmth. It was clear neither adult wanted to be there, but both stayed for the same reason, the child between them. Then it happened. Eyes downcast. Sophie looked up at her, a bright smile forming. "You're pretty." Lily blinked, visibly startled. Then, without meaning to, her lips curled into a reluctant, bashful smile. It was the first time she had smiled all night, and Jake saw it. Sometimes it takes just one child's honesty to unlock something in a stranger's heart. If this moment moved you even a little, don't forget to tap the hype button and stay with us. This story's only just begun. Jake Anderson was 35 years old. On paper, he was the kind of man who turned heads in boardrooms and appeared in Forbes under tech visionaries. As the founder of a startup valued at over $300 million, 0 cents, he had mastered the language of contracts, code, and capital. But at home, behind closed doors, he was just a man raising his daughter, alone. Every morning, before emails and meetings, Jake knelt to tie Sophie's shoelaces and tucked her lunch into a tiny backpack. Every night, no matter how late work kept him, he would sit at her bedside, reading fairy tales in silly voices just to hear her giggle. It had been like that for 3 years, ever since the night Sophie was born and her mother, Ella, never came home from the hospital. Complications. A single moment that rewrote his world. There was no manual for single fatherhood, no board to pitch to, just diapers, midnight fevers, bottles he never prepared quite right, and love. Love that burned so deeply it made him lock the doors to his heart. He let no one in. Until tonight. The blind date had not been his idea. His friend Marcus, both investor and occasional life coach, had pushed. "You're not living, Jake. You're surviving. Just meet her. 1 hour. If it's terrible, I'll owe you steak for a year." So he came. Reluctantly, already half decided to walk out if she turned out like the others, more curious about his wallet than his soul. But Lily Evans was not what he expected. She had not smiled when he arrived, had not tried to charm or flatter. She barely looked at him. No jewelry, no makeup, just a tired coat and guarded eyes that told stories without words. She did not belong to his world and clearly had no desire to. But when Sophie dropped her spoon, Lily had moved instantly. No hesitation. She knelt, wiped the spoon, dabbed the mess from Sophie's dress, and returned it with a soft warning to eat slowly. It was not the act that stayed with Jake, but the instinct behind it, as if she had done it countless times before. This woman had lived something real, and she had not run. Lily Evans was 26, though most mornings she woke feeling much older. Once she had been a rising star at a prestigious music academy, able to play Chopin at 14 with the depth of someone triple her age. Her teachers spoke of competitions and Carnegie Hall, but life had other plans. When her mother was diagnosed with late-stage cancer, Lily walked away from piano halls and practice rooms. She traded them for cleaning jobs at dawn and church hymns by candlelight. Music could not pay hospital bills. She survived on what she could earn. Every dollar funneled into treatment. Her aunt, strict and calculating, offered her a deal 2 weeks ago. "If you want another month at the clinic, you'll go on this date. Smile, be pleasant. He's rich. Maybe he'll take pity." Lily felt sick, but she needed the money. So she put on her only decent coat, pulled her hair back, and told herself she could bear 1 hour of silence or judgment. She expected arrogance, ego, another man who looked at her like she was lucky to be in his presence. She did not expect a man holding a child's hand. She did not expect the little girl to look up at her with wonder and trust, to smile like she meant it, to call her pretty without a trace of irony. And when the spoon hit the floor and Lily saw fear in that child's eyes, she moved. She had to, because she remembered being 5. She remembered her mother's voice after she broke a plate. "It's just a dish, baby. You're more important." So Lily knelt and wiped and reassured. And in that tiny, fleeting moment, she stopped feeling like someone just trying to survive. She felt seen, needed, connected, if only for a moment. The morning wind bit through Lily's coat as she stepped out of the corner grocery store, arms full of discounted canned goods and bruised vegetables wrapped in red stickers. Her fingers were already numb, but she clutched the bags tightly, tucking her chin into her scarf. It was early winter in the city. The sky was pale and overcast, and the sidewalks were wet with yesterday's rain. She walked briskly toward the bus stop, her mind running over which items would stretch longest. Rice, lentils, 1 can of chicken broth. A sudden gust of wind blew open her worn wallet as she pulled out her bus card. Receipts fluttered into the street like brittle leaves. She cursed under her breath and bent down to collect them, her knees hitting the cold pavement. As she reached for the last slip, a shrill, panicked cry cut through the morning hum. "Daddy, where are you?" Lily's head snapped up. Across the street, a small figure stood frozen in the middle of the crowd. Blonde curls, pink coat, trembling hands wrapped around a familiar ragged teddy bear. "Sophie." People passed by, barely noticing her distress. Her eyes were wide with fear, cheeks flushed, mouth quivering. Lily dropped her bag without thinking. Cans rolled against the curb as she darted across the street, weaving through the crowd like someone who had done this before. She knelt in front of the little girl, gently placing her hands on her shoulders. Hey, it's me, you remember? The mean lady from dinner?" she whispered. Sophie blinked, recognized her, and without hesitation threw her arms around Lily's neck. "You're not mean," she whispered back. "You smell like snow." Lily's throat tightened. "Sophie." The voice came from behind them, loud, desperate, shaking. Jake came running around the corner, his face pale, eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on the pair crouched on the sidewalk. His breath caught. Lily stood slowly, Sophie still clinging to her. Jake approached, his voice ragged with relief. "You found her. Thank you. God. Thank you." His hands hovered, unsure whether to pull his daughter away or just hold them both. Lily gave him a short nod and gently released Sophie's arms. She turned to pick up her scattered groceries, brushing her coat clean as she moved to leave. "Can we eat cookies together again?" Sophie chirped suddenly, still holding Lily's fingers. Lily looked down at her, then up at Jake. He hesitated only a second. "There's a coffee place just around the corner," he said. "They have cookies. Decent ones, even by Sophie's standards." Lily raised an eyebrow. "Are they half price, like the ones at Sal's?" Jake smiled. "No, but I'll take care of it." She hesitated, but something about Sophie's grip on her hand, the way the child had looked at her, not with fear, but with trust, made it hard to say no. 15 minutes, Lily said. The coffee shop was small, with steamed windows and the scent of cinnamon in the air. They sat in a corner booth, Sophie munching happily on a cookie, while Jake and Lily sipped from paper cups. Jake handed Lily a new cup just as she reached for her own. Their hands brushed, and Lily flinched slightly. She was not used to kindness that did not come with expectations. She took the cup with a soft, "Thanks." As she lifted it to drink, she misjudged the distance and jolted slightly, just enough for the hot liquid to spill onto Jake's hand. "Oh my God, sorry," she gasped, immediately grabbing a cold napkin from her bag and pressing it gently against the reddening skin. Her movements were quick but careful, her touch instinctive. Jake did not speak. He watched her face, her brows furrowed, lips pressed tight in concern, as she dabbed the burn with the softest care. No one had done that for him in years. He was always the one fixing things, handling crises, smoothing over pain. But now, someone was tending to him, and not out of obligation. He studied her in that moment, not the closed-off woman from the restaurant, but the one here now, focused, real, unexpectedly kind. "Does it hurt?" she asked, not meeting his eyes. "A little," he said, voice low, but not in a bad way. She looked up, surprised, but he smiled. Lily turned back to her cup, cheeks tinged pink. Sophie, oblivious to the tension, dipped her cookie into her milk and announced, "Daddy, I like her." Jake chuckled. "Me too." It began with excuses. Jake would text Lily under the pretense of Sophie. "She asked if you'd come to her painting class. She won't stop talking about you." Lily would roll her eyes, but her heart would tug. So she came. The children's art workshop took place on a bright Saturday morning in a community center park. The sky was blue, the breeze gentle, and tables were set with jars of water, stacks of paper, and an explosion of colored pencils and paint. Sophie grabbed Lily's hand the moment she saw her and dragged her to the table. Jake watched, pretending to focus on the supplies, while sneaking glances every few seconds. They decided to paint a family. Sophie started with a house. Lily sketched a tree beside it. Jake awkwardly tried to draw himself, failing hilariously. When he reached for a dark blue to color his shirt, Lily nudged him gently. "You should go with pink," she said, smirking. "Sophie likes it better." Sophie nodded enthusiastically. Jake surrendered with a dramatic sigh and switched colors. Their laughter came easily after that, natural, unforced, the sound of walls beginning to lower. The next weekend brought a cooking contest at the local park. Nothing serious, just an event with folding tables, picnic benches, and laughing families. Jake signed them up for the fun of it. Lily came insisting she would not actually cook, but when Jake nearly burned the onions and cracked an egg onto the pavement, she stepped in. She taught him how to stir gently, how to add salt after tasting, how to fold ingredients like tucking in a baby. At one point, Jake spilled flour across the table and sneezed. Lily burst out laughing. It was not just a chuckle, it was full, airy, unguarded. Jake stared at her, caught off guard by how much that sound hit him. One rainy evening, they found themselves stuck in a small public library when the downpour caught them unprepared. Sophie wanted a story. They curled into a corner of the children's section, surrounded by shelves of fairy tales. Jake reached for a book, but Sophie pulled Lily's sleeve. "You read it." Lily hesitated, then began. Her voice softened as she read, rhythmic and calm, each word wrapping the room in quiet magic. Her hand rested lightly on Sophie's head, stroking her hair as the child leaned in, content. Jake did not speak. He barely breathed. He watched Lily not as a stranger, not even as a guest, but as someone who somehow belonged. It was the little moments that struck Lily the most. Like when Jake knelt on one knee in the grass to tie Sophie's shoelace, patient, focused, whispering something that made her giggle. Lily had stopped walking and just watched. "You know," she said quietly, "not many men would kneel for a child like that." Jake looked up at her, his fingers finishing the final knot. "I'm not kneeling for just any child," he said. "I'm kneeling for the world I do anything to protect." Their eyes locked for a heartbeat too long. Lily looked away first. One evening, as they left the library again, this time dry and smiling, Jake tugged at the collar of his coat. A button had come loose. He muttered something under his breath. "Hold still," Lily said, stepping closer without thinking. She reached up to fix it, her fingers brushing over his chest. They both froze. Her hand stilled just below his collarbone. His breath hitched. They were inches apart. 1 second. 2, then she lowered her hand. He stepped back. Neither said a word. But the air had changed. Something unspoken lingered between them. Not quite love, not quite ready, but there. Lily walked ahead with Sophie, pretending nothing happened. Jake stood behind, pretending he was not smiling. Sophie loved video calls. She had recently learned how to press the right buttons on Jake's phone and had a habit of calling Lily whenever she got bored, which lately was often. It was a Tuesday evening when it happened. Jake was cooking dinner while Sophie played with her stuffed animals. His phone buzzed quietly on the table. Sophie reached for it, her small fingers tapping with determination. The screen lit up, a FaceTime call connected. "Lily," Sophie beamed, excited. But Lily did not answer immediately. In a small, steamy bathroom across town, Lily had just stepped out of the shower, her hair damp, towel wrapped tightly around her. She heard her phone vibrating. She glanced down at the screen. Sophie. Without thinking, she accepted the call. The moment her face appeared, Jake walked into the room. They both froze. Jake saw her. Towel, wet shoulders, blush creeping across her cheeks, her eyes wide with alarm. Lily squeaked and ducked off screen with a loud gasp. Jake immediately turned his head, facing the ceiling. I'm sorry," Sophie called. Lily's voice trembled from somewhere off camera. Jake's ears were burning red. "You could have just hung up," she muttered, flustered. "I didn't want Sophie to think she did something wrong," Jake said, his gaze still firmly fixed on the ceiling light. There was a beat of silence. Then, unexpectedly, they both laughed. It was soft, genuine, and utterly awkward. "Okay," Lily said, voice steadier now. "Give me 3 minutes. Then I'll call back, fully dressed." Jake smiled without looking at the screen. Good plan. That night, neither of them could quite shake the moment. Lily sat at the edge of her bed later, her damp hair falling over her shoulder, journal open in her lap. Her pen hesitated for a long time before she finally wrote. Why did my heart skip? He did not even say anything. He just turned away, like a gentleman, like someone who cared. Why do I miss him? And that little girl? More than I should. She closed the notebook slowly, as if even the sound of the pages might reveal too much. Across town, Jake stood on the balcony outside his room. The city stretched before him, glittering, humming. The moonlight reflected faintly off the rooftop garden where Sophie had planted her imaginary sunflowers. He leaned on the railing, breathing in the crisp air, but his mind was far away. He kept seeing her face, that startled, human, open expression, so different from the guarded woman he first met. For a second she had looked free. And beautiful. He remembered the laughter, too. Not just from that call, but from the park, the art class, the night at the library. When had her voice become something he looked forward to? When had her presence stopped feeling like an obligation and started feeling like something he missed? They were not a couple, not even close, but the space between them no longer felt empty. It felt like something waiting to be filled. Jake looked up at the moon and smiled softly to himself. He was in trouble, and for the first time in years, he did not mind. The headline hit the internet before Jake even got to his office. Tech CEO dating maid, fatherly instinct, or foolish heart? Underneath, a grainy photo taken through a zoom lens. Jake, Lily, and Sophie at the park. Lily was laughing. Sophie was reaching for her hand. Jake had his arm gently behind them, close but not quite touching. It spread like wildfire. Within hours, board members were calling emergency meetings. Stock whispers circulated. His assistant avoided his gaze. At lunchtime, reporters gathered outside the lobby, shouting questions he refused to answer. He stared at the screen in his office, jaw tight, reading the article again. Unconfirmed sources say the woman, seen on multiple occasions with CEO Jake Anderson and his daughter, works as a cleaner at a downtown school. Is this a case of blind compassion or something far more reckless? He closed the laptop with a sharp snap. That night, just after Sophie went to bed, there was a knock on the door. She came in without waiting for him to answer. Margaret, Ella's mother, Sophie's grandmother. Her heels echoed across the hardwood floors. Her lipstick was perfect. Her face carved from quiet judgment. I read the article, she said. So did the rest of the board. So did the courts. Jake said nothing. She walked past him, surveying the house, the toys, the forgotten blanket on the couch. I tolerated your stubborn independence after Ella passed. I believed you were grieving in your own way. But this, she turned to face him, sharp and cold. You are a public figure. You are a father. And now you are a scandal. His fist clenched at his sides. Lily is not. She is not your wife, Margaret interrupted. She is not Sophie's mother. She is not even someone with a reputation. Jake's voice dropped, steady and dark. She's kind. She's decent. She's real. And she's a liability, Margaret snapped. If this continues, I will file for custody, for Sophie's sake. Jake stood frozen as she walked out. That same night, Lily left. Jake came home from a late meeting to find her spare toothbrush gone. Her shoes by the door, gone. A note rested on the kitchen counter, folded once, written in slanted handwriting. You're a good man, but I'm not the woman who belongs in your world. Please, take care of Sophie. Tell her, I'm sorry. Jake stood still for a long time, the paper shaking slightly in his hand. The next morning, Sophie woke with puffy eyes and refused breakfast. Where's Lily? She asked, her voice soft, eyes hopeful. Jake knelt beside her. She had to go somewhere, sweetheart, but she'll be back. But Lily did not come back. Not that day, not the next, not the one after. Jake searched, called, emailed, drove past her old apartment. Her phone rang once, then went dead. No one had seen her. Not the church, not the school, not even the grocery store where she used to buy discounted fruit. Days blurred, and Sophie grew quieter. She barely spoke, barely smiled. She pushed away her favorite cookies. She cried herself to sleep, whispering into her bear, "Where's Lily? She's my mommy." Jake broke. One evening, as he tucked Sophie into bed, she looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. Did she leave because of me? Jake felt something fracture inside him. He gathered her into his arms, holding her close as she shook against his chest. No, baby, no, never because of you. He kissed the top of her head, voice breaking. Daddy will find her, he whispered. I promise. A tear rolled down his cheek, the first one Sophie had ever seen. She reached up and touched his face. It's okay, Daddy, you can cry too. Jake held her tighter, eyes closing. But inside, a fire was building. He had lost too much already. And this time, he would not lose her. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. By 9, the auditorium was already full. Reporters packed the rows with notepads and cameras, waiting. Whispers floated through the air like static. A few board members stood off to the side, stiff and expressionless. On the stage, the Anderson Technologies logo gleamed on the backdrop, polished and corporate. Jake stood behind the podium, his face pale but composed. A single microphone waited in front of him. He looked out at the crowd, exhaled slowly, and stepped forward. "Good morning," he began. His voice was steady but softer than usual. "I know many of you are here today expecting a denial, an apology, maybe even a resignation." He paused. "I have none of those." Murmurs stirred. Cameras clicked. Jake raised his eyes, gaze sweeping the crowd. "This isn't a scandal. It's a story, mine and hers." He cleared his throat once, then continued. "Yes, I have been seen with a woman who works cleaning schools and playing piano at churches, a woman who doesn't own designer clothes or carry a business card, but she does carry something far more rare these days." He held up a hand. "She carries kindness, integrity, strength, and most of all, love." Somewhere near the middle row, someone gasped softly. Jake's eyes turned somber. "My daughter Sophie lost her mother the day she was born, and for 3 years I've tried to be enough. I thought I had to be strong, successful, untouchable." He looked down for a moment, then met their eyes again. "But Lily walked into our lives, and without trying, she gave my daughter something I couldn't. A quiet safety, a place to be small and seen. She didn't ask for attention. She didn't want anything from me. But she gave us everything." He placed both hands on the podium now. "So no, this is not a scandal. This is love. This woman saved my daughter's heart, and mine." In the back of the room, unseen by most, Lily stood frozen. She had not meant to come. She had seen the conference announcement on the news. She had stood outside for almost 20 minutes, her grocery bag in hand, unsure if her presence would help or only hurt him more. But then she heard his voice, so she stepped inside, quiet, almost invisible, lingering near the emergency exit. Tears welled in her eyes as she listened. Her hands trembled, holding the bag of canned soup and pasta she had just bought. She had come to return his house key, but now she could not move. Then a new voice rang out. "Lily!" Heads turned. From behind the curtain on stage, a small figure darted out, curly hair bouncing, pink dress fluttering as she ran. "Sophie!" She spotted Lily instantly and launched herself into her arms. Lily dropped the grocery bag. It hit the ground with a soft thud as she knelt down, catching the child and pulling her close. Sophie's arms wrapped tightly around her neck. "I missed you," the girl whispered. "You're still my mommy." Lily broke. Tears spilled freely down her cheeks as she held Sophie close, rocking her gently. Her heart thundered in her chest. She did not hear the gasps, did not see the cameras flashing. All she could feel was the small heartbeat pressed against hers. Jake stepped down from the stage. He walked slowly, his steps sure, until he stood in front of them both. His voice cracked, but he did not try to hide it. "I don't care what they think," he said, kneeling so he was level with her. "I care what Sophie feels, and what I feel." His eyes locked with Lily's. "We need you." For a moment, the world held its breath. Then one single clap echoed through the room. Before we left the dot, a second, another, and suddenly the entire auditorium stood, applauding. Lily stared, stunned, as Jake reached for her hand. She took it. The applause swelled, not for a company or a headline, but for a man who chose love, and a woman who finally believed she was enough. 1 year later, the garden behind the Anderson home had changed. Where once it was just a neat stretch of lawn and clipped hedges, it now blossomed with color, sunflowers reaching for the sky, wild lavender curling along the fence, and painted stepping stones marked with tiny handprints. In the center stood a white bench, shaded by a cherry blossom tree in full bloom. Lily sat on that bench, her hands resting gently over Sophie's as they hovered above a miniature keyboard on a wooden stand. "Softly now," she whispered, guiding Sophie's fingers with the grace of someone who had once played concertos in dimly lit halls. "Like you're telling a secret." Sophie pressed the keys, one by one. The notes rose into the morning air, light, slow, sweet like a lullaby. Her tongue stuck out a little in concentration, and Lily smiled. Jake watched them from the kitchen window for a while before stepping out into the sun, a cake balanced in his hands. It was decorated simply, with strawberries and little sugar flowers Sophie had chosen herself. He walked down the garden path and stopped just behind them. Lily looked up as he approached, her smile soft and curious. Jake crouched beside them, setting the cake carefully on the table. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, one he had held onto for far too long. But he did not open it. Instead, he gently placed the box into Sophie's small hands and whispered something in her ear. The little girl's eyes lit up with understanding. She turned, walked to Lily, and opened her palm. A silver ring, delicate, nestled in the center. Jake knelt down beside them, his voice low, steady, full of meaning. "Sophie and we were two people learning how to breathe again. You taught us how." He paused, then smiled up at her. "So, now, would you let us live with you forever?" Lily's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes glistened. "I was forced to come that day," she said through a tearful laugh. "But I chose to stay." She reached out and wrapped her arms around them both, drawing Jake and Sophie into an embrace that felt like a promise. Sophie giggled and kissed Lily's cheek. "Now you're my forever mommy." The wind rustled through the trees, carrying music, laughter, and the quiet heartbeat of a family that had once been broken, but chose to heal together. And this time, no one was pretending. They were exactly where they were meant to be. Together, forever. And so, what began as a reluctant blind date became a home. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. Sometimes, love finds us in the most unexpected places. And when it does, we do not need to chase it. We just need to stay. If this story touched your heart even a little, don't forget to subscribe to Kindness and Love Tales, where every story is a gentle reminder that love, healing, and second chances still exist. Because kindness is the richest love story of all.